So thank you so much to Dr. Akpan for honoring this invitation. I don't think we need to wait more because we like to keep the meetings within 35 minutes, 1 hour max. So I would like to hand over to Dr. Akpan to start his teachings for us today. Thank you so much.
Right, okay. Thanks. Thank you, Honorable Kazim, and all the members of NICASA. It's important. It's an important organization, and I'll get to discussing the role of civil societies like this in managing what you probably would call citizen diplomacy in the international system. And so it's a great thing, and it's cool. So essentially, we're looking at, as the topic says, we're looking at image. And I'd like to invite our attention to exactly what do we understand by image before we even talk of how to manage the image. Image and imagination comes from the same root word. So if you look at image, you look at imagination, you look at imagery, okay? They all come from the same root word, and everything has to do with image. And it's a function of concept, it's a function of construct, it's a function of disposition. So first and foremost, what is your disposition? How do you see a certain phenomenon? And how do you define it? What kind of relationship do you have with that phenomenon? And more importantly, how does that phenomenon perceive you? And that is very important. So if you are looking at it from the point of, because the perception is what leads to relationship. For you to keep a good perception, you must continually manage that relationship, the back and forth relationship that exists among humans. So public relation essentially is deliberate, is intentional. It is a process, a concept that it is intentionally started, enunciated, articulated to create goodwill. It has to be intentional to create goodwill with the different publics and how that public perceives you. So it's a function of perception. It's a function of you creating a favorable environment for you to be perceived as a good person. And I'll give you a typical example. Let's before we get to humans, let us go to inanimate objects like take a car, Mercedes-Benz. You know, the Mercedes-Benz guys will tell you that there are only two cars in the world, one Mercedes-Benz and the others. Okay, so what they are trying to do is that they have classed Mercedes-Benz as an elite car, as a safe car, as the car that you must have and all that. So growing up, most of us will grow up having Mercedes-Benz as one of the best cars in our mind. Now, it may not necessarily be the best in terms of performance. It may not be the best in terms of fuel economy, but because there is a deliberate intention of marketing Mercedes-Benz so you have it in your mind that it is the best car, that if you have a Mercedes-Benz, that gives you class, it gives you status. So whether Toyota, Honda, and the rest of them come with a more efficient fuel car, it doesn't matter until you own a Mercedes-Benz. That is when you feel that you have actually become an elite. It's all about perception. So image is everything, it's perception, everything. So having said that, a public relation itself is, and let me quickly explain what publics are, because in public relation, there isn't just one public. There are different publics. Take, for instance, if you're running on like NICASA, for instance, one of the publics that are available to NICASA, and I think NICASA, we need to think from it from this perspective. The publics that are available to NICASA, one, are the Nigerians living in South Africa. That's a public to NICASA. Secondly, I'll start from the different publics. That in the different publics, you have the Nigerians living in South Africa, that's a public to NICASA. The South African citizens themselves, is a public. The South African government is a public. The Nigerian consular and High Commission is a public. So that's about 4 different public. So the method in which you are going to use in approaching South African citizen is different from the method you're going to use in approaching Nigerians, and also different from the method you're going to use in approaching the High Commission of Nigeria and also the South African government. And then there's the media. There's the South African media, which is also a public. So a civil organization like NICASA, for instance, will have to understand the different strategies and mechanisms that they're going to use in managing these different publics. So that's why, and in managing them, that is the relationship part of it. You must be able to relate well with them. The relatedness is deliberate. You have to initiate activities. You need to initiate activities that will continually keep that relationship in place. Because the moment those activities begin to dry up, you discover that there is a gap. There's a gap in that relationship, in that relationship and that initiation, communication becomes very important, because communication is a platform. They are the channels in which you are going to promote these programs. So the moment you do not have any activity again, you discover that communication will cease. And when communication ceases, there will be what you call in communication, there's a concept in communication they call the concept of effective communication. Within that effective communication, there are barriers to communication, and one of the barriers to communication is what you call congruency. So the moment communication ceases, what you call incongruency begins to happen. In other words, assumptions begin to arise. So, okay, I do not know you don't know me, we are not on talking terms. So we only assume about each other. So each time I see you walk past my window, I begin to assume you are coming to look at me, spy on me and all that. Each time I walk past your door, you begin to assume. There are assumptions. Those assumptions are coming up because there is no relationship between us. And that relationship between us is fuel. The life wire of that relationship is communication. Okay, so let's get back to, let's go to the main issue, Nigeria and Nigerians in South Africa. First, let us even understand why are Nigerians having this kind of image in South Africa and indeed, okay, other parts of the world. Now, in international relations, where diplomacy has its forte, in international relations, it is a function of power. Political power is in the international system. So it is an engagement between countries, okay, between countries to achieve some certain goals and objectives. Now, in that relationship, there are some certain targets that are set, and there are some certain parameters that are drawn. And those parameters could be in commerce, trade and commerce. So you have what you call the trade and commerce bilateral relationship. It could be in education and cultural exchange. It will be in political. It will also be at the highest level of what you call the ministerial level. There's also the highest level of the, after the ministerial level, what you have now is the presidential level. So at the ministerial level, it's coordinated by what you call the binational commission, okay, where there is a commission and then the two countries have a handshake, and then the ministers can relate easily. The foreign minister in Nigeria can call the foreign minister in South Africa, then they can discuss these issues. However, before you get to the point of being respected, you have to look at what is Nigeria itself. That is very critical. It's very critical. I'd like to submit that if you have a very wealthy man in your community, you will discover that many people in that community will have respect for him. They will naturally respect him because they see him as being wealthy, influential, he has money, he can solve problems, and then his children are well fed, they go to good school, they're distinguished, and what have you. So people in the neighborhood, in that community, will respect him. And he will have better respect than a man who is not wealthy as him, perhaps even a poor man. Okay, they look at him and say, in fact, they look at the children of the poor people as riffraffs. Oh, this one's, and when there's a missing item in the community, they won't even look at the children of the rich man, they look at the children of the poor man because they feel they have lack, there's lack in their house. So they are likely the ones that stole that the missing item. So it is from that concept that you need to understand, and I'm trying to make it as practical as possible so that we can understand the concept and how, where we are where we are. So this is the concept. So first and foremost, we have to look at Nigeria as a country. Now, Nigeria's centerpiece for international relations is what you call the Afrocentric. So what it therefore means that every policy, every diplomatic policy that is being promoted by Nigeria is essentially seen from the point of view of Africa. So the African man and the African continent becomes the most important element in the public relation policies of Nigeria. It is Afrocentric and is very important. The reason is that Nigeria is a black, is in Africa. One, Nigeria is perceived to be populate the most populous country in Africa, particularly sub-Saharan. Even in the whole of Africa, whether sub-Sahara or the whole of Africa, Nigeria is, in terms of population, has the largest population. So you discover that every 4 or every 5 African you meet, likely from a statistics point of view, it is possible that one is a Nigerian. So that becomes very key. So if that is very key, and that Nigerian is seen as being everywhere. So the government, and this started in the days, from the days of Tafawa Balewa, where they made Africa the centerpiece of the foreign policy. So we started progressing from there. Now, as at that point, Nigeria was so wealthy. Nigeria was so wealthy, oil boom had come, particularly after independence. Oil was found in Iloibiri in 1958. And then in the early 60s, oil production, or if you like, I don't think Nigeria is an oil producing country. I think Nigeria is an oil extracting country. We hardly produce these things. We only extract and just export for other people to refine. We don't even know how many numbers, the volume of oil, the barrels that we produce per day. All those are issues. Okay, that's another conversation for another day. So so Nigeria was so wealthy, and that we just didn't know what to do with money. So Nigeria is on record to have paid salaries of some African and black-dominated countries in the Caribbean, like Jamaica, Cuba. Nigeria was among, even though Nigeria is not contiguous with South Africa, but Nigeria was part of the frontline states. In the days of fight against apartheid, there was something they call the frontline states. The frontline states were states that shared physical borders with South Africa, like Lesotho, Swaziland, Zimbabwe, and also those were frontline states. But because of the importance of Nigeria in Africa, and because of how Nigeria had made Africa their centerpiece of international relations or diplomacy, Nigeria essentially just became a frontline state. So they sponsored, they paid, trained a lot of ANC, as at that time, ANC people in, if somewhere came to Nigeria and all that, Thabo Mbeki was in 1004 in Victoria Island, they trained them and did all kinds of things. Now, as Nigeria was progressing politically, Nigeria was bedeviled by all kinds of issues, political issues, with the military coup, the interregnum, and all that happened. Now, while that was going on, the fortune of the Nigerian was depreciating, was going down. Now, remember we spoke about the rich man in the community. Okay, so we begin to tie it up now. So the fortune of the average Nigerian was depreciating. Okay, there was political instability. Now, when you have political instability, economic depreciation and decline, that obviously your socio-cultural life begins to go down. So what you now have is that you begin to have people that are poor. You begin to have people that are desperate for some kind of recognition. You begin to have all those kind of unemployment becomes an issue and all that. So that automatically leads you to why people want to leave Nigeria. So the basis of why people are leaving Nigeria is because the Nigerian society, Nigerian state does not guarantee their economic objectives anymore. So they feel that while living in Nigeria, they're not able to achieve their capacity as their endowment as human beings. So they look for economic salvation elsewhere, and then they travel out. So this is the essence of the migration, how you are migrating. Now, migration is a phenomenon that happens across the globe. It started far back, in fact, even from the days of the Bible, in the book of Father Abraham, he migrated from Ur to Canaan. So God himself is a major driver of migration. The Bible is all about migration and what have you and all that. So a lot of people were migrating. So it is a human phenomenon, it's a human activity. Okay, so it's not restricted to Nigeria alone. It is across board, whether you are Caucasian, you're African, you are from the one race or whatever race you belong, the pygmies and all that. In fact, the word diaspora, interestingly, basically is associated more with the Jews. They call them the Jewish diaspora. It was the Jews that were sacked out of Israel. So all the Jews that were living outside motherland Israel were called the Jewish diaspora, and they were living in what you call the ghettos as at that time. So I know we use some of this word loosely without understanding the history behind this word. So essentially, that was basically what it was. So now in modern time, in modern linguistic, modern this conversation, we use diaspora. So we can say Nigerian diaspora in South Africa, but it is a function of those that are living outside their home country or their countries of birth. And migration is actually a guaranteed right that you can migrate. You can be economic migrant, and there's so many reasons why you can migrate: war, conflict, and all that. But one of the major drivers from a research, one of the major driver of migration is economics. Is economic. Now, when you now migrate on economic ground, and you are not only the one migrating, you will have a huge population, and it is usually targeted, is usually with the youth population. When the youth population begin to migrate, now there is a problem. So the global community where you are migrating to begin to see an upsurge of people coming into their country. Now take note that people that are migrating are different, and all sorts of people are migrating. You have the ones that are skilled, you have the ones that are not skilled, you have the ones that are criminals that are running from legal issues in Nigeria. Some maybe escape from wherever, so they find themselves into different countries. Now, when they go into different countries, these people have not dropped their character. They've not dropped their behavior. They've not dropped their activities. So they come with their activities, and then they settle in the country. Now, as they settle in the country, some of them are not skilled. Some did not come through any kind of legal means, or some come with a short stay visa, and then they overstay the visa because they don't want to go back home. What they are after is essentially to have economic survival. That's why they left their country in the first place. So this is where the problem lies. So we have to now, so I want to establish the background. What is driving the migration of Nigerians to other countries, and Nigerians migrate across board to different countries, different continents. But from a statistics point of view, there's a lot of movement. If I'm doing a paper, and it will be published very soon. I've just finished a research paper where I was looking at the migrants from the Sahel region into Nigeria. Because as South Africa is also saying, oh man, we have these people here, Nigerians also have a lot of people from the Sahel region. The Sahel region are countries like Burkina Faso, Chad, Niger Republic, and all that. And these are countries that have been ravaged by desertification, by all kinds of issues. So they are also coming to Nigeria for economic survival. And some of them come with their cows. And you know the story of the Fulani headsmen coming in, and most of them are unskilled. So they come into your space, and then they just disperse into the country. And some coming from Cameroon, some coming from wherever. Now, it is in that same vein that you also have a lot of Nigerians that have migrated into South Africa. Some skilled, and the skilled ones are usually found in the academia. And Nigerians have done excellently well in the academia. Nigerians are lecturing, are publishing papers. In fact, you cannot ignore the contribution of Nigerians in the good ranking, because if you look at the ranking of universities in Africa, South Africa dominates the ranking. Now, the Nigerian scholars that are there are good contributors. Their activities contributes to the ranking of South African universities. Now, you now also have the medical doctors. You now have the engineers and all kinds of people. Then some came for businesses and all that. Now, the problem now begins to magnify from here. Now, it is almost difficult. If you look at the landscape of South Africa very well, you'll discover that it is easier for South African companies like MTN, what have you, and all that, to migrate to South Africa, to Nigeria, and set up a business. So you have DSTV, MTN, and all that. But ask yourself, how many Nigerian corporate organizations are in South Africa? Not very much. So they are not. So Nigerian investment in South Africa in terms of organized private sector is very low. But in terms of South Africa going towards Nigeria is very high. So you have banks, you have telecoms, you have ICT, and all kinds of players in different sectors of the Nigerian economy, which is unlike the case. So what you now have in Nigeria are people that have come to do petty trading, traders. Some just come, they really do not know why. They just want to leave Nigeria. So by the time they just arrive here, they now begin to ask themselves, what do I do? They had no plan, no intention, nothing whatsoever. They just arrive here and then begin to look at the Nigerian community for, I'm here, what do I do? Now, that is a very dangerous trend, because if the man doesn't have a skill, and the man did not even come with any kind of investment intention, and he arrives, what exactly will he be doing? So all kinds of things happen. So he can fall into crime, he can fall into all kinds of things and all that. So this is where the situation has dropped us. Now, the Nigerian government understanding that these issues are real, the Nigerian government is supposed to, and indeed, part of the policy is that the Nigerian government puts what do you call it now, embassies and all that, to manage the affairs of Nigeria in the country, like in South Africa. Yeah. So the Nigerian embassy or Nigerian High Commission has a responsibility to extend consular services to all Nigerians that are living here. So the question now is that how well are they doing? Because South Africa now has its own internal crisis, domestic issues and all that. And they are saying, oh, I mean, these are political and domestic issues. They are managing, oh, there's job issue, unemployment issue, oh, these guys are coming and all that. And some of these things are not true. If you look at it from a statistics point of view, it's not true. They're not true, but they're not very correct, as it were. But there's a perception. Remember, I'm talking of perception. So there's a perception issue. Now, this is where the Nigerian High Commission, in tandem with NICASA, with organizations like NICASA, becomes very instrumental, because the perception is what you are managing. The perception of an average South African to an average Nigerian is what you are managing. Okay, so it has to be deliberate. And the Nigerian government will have to relate to the Nigerian community. What exactly are the issues? How factual are these issues? Have they done analysis of these issues to see whether these things are factual or not? Do they have statistics? Do they have information to be able to dissect and disaggregate whatever is being said? Now, the media becomes very important. There are two medias here that are going to interface: the media in South Africa and also the media from Nigeria. Now, remember that the media in South Africa are going to report, look, in media, in journalism, you say bad news sells fast. Any other news that is not bad news is a public relation, is PR news. Probably will have to pay for it. So the media in South Africa is not going to be looking for any good news about Nigerians to report. They'll be looking for that news that is bad. Okay, human interest or hard news, as whether in journalism you call it soft news or hard news, whatever the category of the news, as long as it is something that is going to make headline, sell their paper, get traction to their media space and all that, that is what they are going to report. It is the nature of the media. So the media is not going to report anything favorable, just, oh, this Nigeria. No, the media will not. It is now the responsibility of the consular or the High Commission as an umbrella body through the consular that engages in consular services, and organizations like NICASA, which is a civil organization that is representing the diaspora community, to create the activities. Remember that I talked about activities. To create the activity. Now, those activities is what you will deliberately feed to the South African media. So if you want to create goodwill for yourself, because public relations eventually will need to create goodwill for you. So if you're going to create goodwill for yourself, you must deliberately create activity that you can now push to the media platform, that when they report, it becomes favorable. So you begin to change the narrative. So the Nigerian High Commission, in conjunction with bodies like NICASA, will have to seize the narrative, because right now they are lacking. They've not come to the party. They're not there. So what you have done is that you have allowed organizations like Dudula and all that to take all those activities, and those activities that are happening, the media will surely report them, because the media must report events, and those events are not events that are favorable to Nigerians. So we have, and I'm using Nigeria because we are discussing Nigeria within the context of Nigeria. Let us leave other African countries. So it is because we are not creating enough feed, enough news item for the South African media to report. And the media, we have to categorize the media into the traditional media and the social media. The social media being the Instagram, the Facebook, and what have you and all that. And then the traditional media being the television, newspaper, and all that. Whichever way we look at it, we need to now engage in creating favorable activities that will be reported by the media. Now, how do we do this? Now, the Nigerian High Commission will have to adopt a principle in international relations or diplomacy, if you like, that is called citizenship diplomacy. Now, citizen diplomacy involves that take for instance, Nigerians are skillful in trading. We are entrepreneurs and skillful in so many things. How many times will the Nigerian community now organize a clinic, a business entrepreneur clinic, a boot camp, and say, look, every South Africans that have graduated from, take for instance, take the 3 best matric in your community, we want to train them in business, or we want to sponsor them, want to give them a scholarship. Those are citizenship. You go to communities I mean, during the flood and all that, what were the efforts of Nigerians in South Africa and the Nigerian organization and the Nigerian High Commission to have gone into various communities to create help, support, relief materials. And if all those things were there, then the South African media will report it. And guess who is reading or watching the South African media? The South Africans themselves, both the South African government and the South African public. So the people who are going to read about it and see how South Africans, how Nigerians are helping out during crisis period, like the flooding period, the way they gave relief material, the way they assisted a lot of communities and all kinds. So these are the issues. Now, you now also look at, take for instance, the business aspect. Now, there's unemployment in South Africa. One of the smart things for NICASA to do in conjunction with the Nigerian High Commission is to say, look, let us set up a fund. Let us set up a committee, some kind of a special purpose vehicle where what we'll be doing is to train South Africans in business. And when you train them in business, maybe like trading, how to trade, and then collectively you give them 10,000 grand or 20,000 grand, like microcredit, you give it to them and then let them go and start business. These things will be reported in the South African media, because the only way you can change the perception of South Africans or manage the image of Nigerians in South Africa is through those activities that are reported by the media. The South African that lives in Limpopo or in Mpumalanga does not necessarily know what is going on in the kind of activities you are doing in Johannesburg or in Upington or in Durban or in Cape Town. They don't know. So for them to be able to know, you have to, of necessity, okay, make sure that you create the activity and that is reported through the media. It is the media that will take this information, because the media is a super highway that will take this information to these people. So the guy who lives somewhere in Bloemfontein or Kwakwa also sees it on his social media, reads about it, how the Nigerians have assisted a lot of South Africans into business, how Nigerians have encouraged them, have empowered them, what you call the empowerment program, how the Nigerians have gone to a market in maybe like Durban or whatever and have set up businesses for South Africa now. It is favorable news. So what you are doing, that you are trying to gain a right perception, you are trying to gain friendship. You are trying to be intentional in creating a perception that is right to you. Now, when you begin to do that, some people will begin to look at you from, oh, these Nigerians are really trying, they are supporting us, they are helping us. The narrative is changing gradually. Now, the moment you recruit the disciples among the South Africans through deliberate infusion and diffusion of those kind of South African activities, of humanitarian and empowerment activities, you will gain some disciples among the South Africans who will now on their own begin to speak to their community. Oh, these Nigerians are different. Unlike these other countries are not doing more. Like these Nigerians are supporting us. Oh, can you imagine this happen and all that? So there has to be those activities. And it cannot be done in vacuum. You cannot just sit down and expect that this thing, because human beings naturally, I talked about the disposition of man. The disposition of man naturally is negative. Is to look at issues from negative, to look at issues from the worst case scenario, because man is in his fallen state. I mean, if you look at it, man, the anthropology of man and the etymology of man and all that, man is from, and even from a religious classical point of view, man is in a fallen state. There is nothing really too comely about man. Man is negative, man looks at it from that. So for you to be able to influence the thinking of man, it has to be deliberate. You have to create activities. You have to ensure that those activities are targeted. Let's take an instance, the Zama issue that happened somewhere in, was it Limpopo now also, where some miners, where some group of Nigerians also wanted to record and all that, and then some people came and raped and all that. Okay, now what I have seen, Nigerian embassy or high commission or Nigerian high commissioner issuing press releases that only are read by Nigerians alone. And in fact, not all Nigerians are even reading those press releases. Now, but this matter was widely reported in the media, and not just in the local media, in international media. And then thank God that the media tried to, because in the media, there's something called framing, the framing theory, where you frame people from a certain perspective. Even in criminology, you also look at it from that point of view, where you already frame a man, so well, you suspect him immediately. So Nigerians have been framed, or rather foreigners have been framed, but let's limit our conversation to Nigerians have been framed. So the mere mention of the word Nigeria, many people will not even wait to read the story to see that the Nigerians are even victims, that they were also, but they were the production crew that hired it and they got somebody to hire. They are not even interested in that, because most of this rape case was perpetrated by other people, but not by Nigerians. But because of the perception, because of the existing residual perception that an average South African will have, the moment he hears the word Nigeria, in his mind is that Nigerians have done it again. So the reaction you now begin to see, this wave of whatever, whatever you want to call it, this wave, directly or indirectly, is a result, is a direct fallout of that activity. So the question now is that, where is the Nigerian High Commission? Where is NICASA in all these things? Because Nigerians and NICASA and the High Commission ought to have known. Let me make a strong point again in public relations. Public relations is being proactive. You have to be able to think. It's called crisis management. Crisis management is the function of communication. You have to be able to anticipate that there will be crisis. So you are always thinking that there's a crisis. So you do what you call scenario planning. You plan scenario, you do simulation, that if this is happening here, what should we do? So if Nigeria had a mechanism in place, okay, that if there's an issue, this is how we are going to respond, and that issue would happen, this NICASA in conjunction with the Nigerian High Commission would have immediately activated that mechanism to do something to counter the narrative that has pulled Nigeria. For instance, Nigerians probably would have gone up to say, oh, go to visit the Nigerians that were raped, let them talk their own story, give the story and all that, begin to change the narrative and the perception so that an average South African listens to them and says, oh, these guys are also victims. So we end the victim status at that point, that we are also vulnerable. We are victims in this whole situation. And then so it must be deliberate. But Nigerians were not there. And the organization in Nigeria, or even the High Commission, is not there. It's not there. So it is not going to, we're not just going to command something from the air for it to happen. It has to be intelligently, intellectually articulated and implemented so that these things can have the lasting effect. Because if the community is not right, you will not be able to survive. You won't be able to do business. You won't be able to get any kind of thing. So your objective of coming to South Africa is being defeated, because you were running away from Nigeria that was hostile, quote and unquote, and you now come to a foreign country where you are now witnessing another hostility. So where are you going to stay? Where are you going to run to when the sea is burning and all that? Now, if the country back home is failing you, remember that it is because of the decline of Nigeria. I can tell you one thing for sure. Even if an American, for instance, shoots somebody in South Africa, the reaction of the media will not be the same thing that if a Nigerian shoots somebody in South Africa. The reason is simple. America is a powerhouse. In the international system, power matters. Power is about political influence and economy. What is the economic prowess of Nigeria? What is the importance of Nigeria? Look, Nigeria, as we speak, is a hegemonic power in Africa. Nigeria has the largest economy in terms of GDP in Africa. Okay, Nigeria has the largest population. So Nigeria is a major player in the new, in the thinking of the African Free Trade Zone. But to what extent is Nigeria appropriating this advantage to themselves? We are not appropriating our advantages to ourselves. Because, take for instance, let me give you a simple scenario. South Africa has the most industrialized economy in Africa. Nigeria has the largest market in Africa and the largest economy in terms of GDP. So when you now run the African Free Trade Zone, okay, now it is not important, it's possible that South African businesses will benefit more, because that what it means is that because South Africa has a more manufacturing strength than Nigeria. So you can manufacture goods in South Africa and export it to Nigeria without paying a tax. Because the whole concept of that idea is free movement of goods. They start with goods, trade integration, and then you can move later to person migration and take off the borders, take off the visa, the borders and all that, like European Union. But before we get to that level, let's even deal with the trade. Now, Nigeria knows that it's a huge market. That the South African manufacturers want to penetrate that market. So to what extent is the Nigerian government taking to negotiate for better treatment of Nigerians in South Africa? Because They could have called. There is a binational commission that has been set up between South Africa and Nigeria. The last time President Buhari came to South Africa, they ratified that. And then they have what you call the early warning mechanism. Now, the early warning mechanism ought to have shown that you guys are doing this to whatever. I mean, I've seen videos and all that to say, oh, these Nigerians and all that. So the government in the embassy and the High Commission and all that, they are not doing anything, because the early warning would have been that for them to meet with the counterpart of South Africa to say, look, these are issues that are developing. How can we mitigate it before it snowballs into something of a crisis and all that? Okay, so there is no deliberate policy and approach. We are not even taking advantage of the protocol that exists between Nigeria and South Africa in the binational commission. So these are the problems. Why are these happening? It is highly possible that from the Nigerian perspective, you do not have square pegs in square holes. You do not have round pegs in round holes. So if you get people that do not understand public relation, international communication, and also diplomacy, okay, diplomacy, you run into trouble that way. So we need to do more. We need to really do more. At this point, I'd like to stop and see if there are any questions that anybody wants to ask that I may respond to.
Thank you very much, Dr. Akpan, for a massive, massive expose on not only public relations, image making, but the whole idea of the balance of power, political economy between Nigeria and South Africa. You've touched on many points. So at this stage, I'll pass over to the Secretary General, Honorable Tunde Kazim, to open the floor for questions. Thank you very much for a wonderful presentation. We thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much to our speaker, Dr. Akpan. And thank you so much, Honorable Tunji. It is truly an eye-opener for me to hear some of this perspective that we can use to rebrand ourselves and project a better image to our people and also to our host country. It's actually a huge insight when you give the idea of creating the content for the local media. Where there's no content, what would they project? You know, so it's really, really an eye-opener. And I thank you for touching that part. Before we go further, I would like to ask if anyone has any questions to kindly indicate by raising up the hand so we can take the questions. We have about 15 minutes more to go. You know, we are very strict with time so that we can all go to continue our business for the night. So
Okay.
please kindly indicate.
I have a question. Okay, you said I should raise my hand, but I can't find the button. Okay, raise hand. I have pressed it. Okay. I raised my hand. Can I go?
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Dr. Akpan, I want to look at my own question. I want to pose it from an angle of trade. So, for example, we have seen Access Bank come in here. We've also seen Air Peace, they signed the bilateral air service trade agreement just after the xenophobic attacks in 2019, when President Buhari came to South Africa. Now, why do you think that these companies come here? Access Bank, Air Peace, for example, they spend a lot of money to come and set up shop here. And they're lazy to engage the community on a profound publicity campaign that gives us evidence that they're doing business in this country. Why do you think this is their approach? That's the first question. The second question, I've been in this country for almost 2.5 decades. And I've seen that if you go to you talked about the Binational Commission, which created the Chamber of Commerce, South Africa-Nigeria Chamber. Now, firstly, when you say to Nigerians, join the chamber, they're reluctant to join the chamber. Now, when you then go to the chamber, you find that out of every 10 South African companies, there's hardly any Nigerian-owned businesses there. Why is this the case after almost 30 years of a formal relationship between Nigeria and South Africa? I thank you.
All right, okay. Great question. The last question is related to the first question also. Airpeace, Dangote. I mean, I don't know how many of you are aware that Dangote has some kind of interest in a cement company in Mpumalanga. And that goes to say that we are not there because we are not doing, and that answers your question. But now this is the same here. Now, one of the reasons, a bit of international history here, one of the reasons why there are issues between the West and Iran is that when oil was discovered in Iran, the British, through British Petroleum, had gone in there, of course, with Her Majesty and all that, they signed some kind of agreements and what have you with the political power at that time to allow them to mine, produce, and also use, because we had moved away from the agrarian society to the industrial stage. And this industrial stage requires oil to power economic activity. Now, the moment that government fell and then you had a new government come in place and started threatening the British economic interest, take note, I want you to take note very carefully. This was a company. Now, it was the British that invited the Americans into the Middle East, because the British were the ones that actually had a political influence in the Middle East. In fact, they colonized part of, if you've heard of British Palestine, that was what, they were the one that created first Tel Aviv for Israel to return, and then what you call the Aliyah, and then expanded to what Israel is today. So the British had a very large influence there. The French also had some kind of influence. So they invited the Americans. It was economic. Now, every multinational that goes out, the government of the sending, the disclosing country supports that multinational. The Americans are ready to drop Marines in the Niger Delta of Nigeria to allow ExxonMobil, Texaco, Chevron Texaco to extract oil. Because for every success of ExxonMobil and Shell, and what have you, they pay taxes back to their country. And then the people of America benefit from that. So there is a concept in international relations and also international communication where you call the role of the multinationals. The role of the multinationals are very important. So the multinationals are backed. It is a deliberate trade policy of every country to support their country. Look, in economics, in political economy, there's the difference between GDP and GNP. Now, GNP is gross national product, while GDP is gross domestic product. The difference is that GNP is the aggregate activity and income that your nationals have outside your country, repatriating back to your country, while GDP is the activity, economic activity within your country. So GNP is very important because it shows how productive or whatever your people are outside the country. So when these companies go, they are backed by the government. There's a deliberate policy to support them where they go. Then they put all the machinery government in place to drive the success. So a Dangote, an Access Bank that has come to South Africa. Now, take note that business, trade, everybody's trying to gain market share. Everybody's trying to take advantage of opportunities to be able to maximize. We are talking of capitalism here. It's not a charitable organization. It's not a social activity. It is a capitalist activity. So in capitalism, you maximize all benefits. So the South African companies that are, take for instance, South African companies that are here in South Africa will lobby the government and do all kinds of things to ensure that most of those companies of Nigerians are frustrated in coming to Nigeria so that they do not come and compete with them and compete with the market share. Now, what is the government doing? Now, at the level of international, the federal government is supposed to have a trade policy that into every international policy, every embassy of Nigeria and every high commission of Nigeria has a what you call the trade and cultural attaché. Now that trade attaché is supposed to collate intelligence, business intelligence, and use it to the advantage of Nigerian companies and promote economic and trade activities in the country. So it is the Nigerian government that is dropping the ball. Naturally, the South African government and the South African policies will try to see how they can play down the Nigerian culture so that South African businesses will do well. However, South African businesses are pushing into Nigerian space, economic space, to do business, MTN and all that. While they are there, MTN will undertake all kinds of activities to prevent even Glo from competing with them through corporate social responsibility, through all kinds of strategy to ensure that they are dominating that telecom space, which is the most lucrative telecom industry in Africa. They are doing everything that. So what is the Nigerian doing? What is in Glo thinking of coming to South Africa? If you understand what I'm saying. So the Nigerian government has a lot to play in that regard. Now you're talking of when you start up a cultural attaché, very good. But many Nigerians are not participating because of cultural issues. Ask yourself, take a census of Nigerians that are in South Africa. Many of them are professionals, and the ones that are not professionals are trade and business people. Now, what kind of businessmen and traders that are in South Africa? Most of these people that are in South Africa, look, in Nigeria, for instance, there is a concept where you have an apprenticeship, where somebody sets up a shop in selling cosmetics or spare parts. It brings some people from his village or whatever to learn. After that, they settle him. And when they settle him, he goes and sets up his shop. Now, these are guys without any kind of formal and corporate approach to doing business. So when they come to South Africa, they bring that culture. So it's a cultural issue. Now, while they are there, they are not used to chambers of commerce. They survive on their own. The Nigerian government, in any case, doesn't even support any businesses. In fact, the greatest threat to business in Nigeria are regulators. The government, the regulators of business, they tax and they just harass you up and down and all that. So when these people come here, they are not educated in that aspect of doing business, in how to take advantage of chambers of commerce and all that. I have attended a Nigerian chamber of commerce business where the then Nigerian High Commissioner was also in attendance. South African companies were thinking of how can they make inroad into Nigeria. The Nigerian companies were not there. The very few guys that came, they were coming here to talk politics. In the Southwest, in the Southeast and all that. The businessman is not interested in your political arrangement. They're just looking at the market. And they look at market, they look at 200 million people. If I take 10% of 200 million, that's 20 million. So they want to be able to sell their product to 20 million people. But the Nigerians will need to change their approach to business. Now, I know Nigeria is a big country and some of them are satisfied just doing business within Nigeria, but hey, they're not doing well. Because if you look at the total, if you saw the year end of MTN Nigeria and MTN South Africa drove revenue for MTN MTN Global. So there are opportunities. Recently, just 2 days ago, Zambian government is asking Dangote to come and help them in investing, and I think in fertilizer business or something like that in Lusaka and all that. So we have companies that can go abroad, that can go overseas and make those investments, but it is not coordinated, it's not articulated. There has to be a lot more deliberate policy with the Nigerian foreign minister working with Nigerian trade and investment minister. And luckily we have what you call Nigerian Export Promotion Council to be able to encourage many Nigerians to come. And then the embassies abroad will need to have a database of Nigerian businesses here. And then those database that they have, they should be able to encourage them to participate in the chambers of commerces, local chambers of commerces in Nigeria, and see how they can take advantage. So we need to change our culture, our orientation in how we do business. We need to become a lot more corporate and understand that business is about taking advantage of opportunities that are available. It's a capitalist world, and South Africa is a capitalist country. So also is Nigeria. So we have to look at it from that perspective.
Thank you so much, sir. And I must say that you have done justice to that question. We still have one more hand up. We have 3 more minutes. So, Doctor, I hope you will round up the answer in 1 minute.
I'll try.
Honorable Godfrey, you can go ahead with your question.
Okay. Thank you very much. I just want to touch on the area of social cohesion. The last time our former CG came to Durban, he advised the community to engage in cohesion. We asked him who will be responsible for sponsoring the social cohesion, because social cohesion involves a lot of budget. So I want to ask Dr. Akpan, is there provision, financial provision for social cohesion in the consulate? And what are some of the social cohesion activities that are required to help build the image of Nigeria in South Africa and then diaspora? Thank you.
Okay, great. Social cohesion is basically what you call citizenship diplomacy. How do you integrate with the people and all that? Now, there are two levels. There's the level of the government, at the level of the government and at the level of the people. Now, ideally, when you set up an embassy abroad, you are supposed to fund the embassy for some kind of consular activities. And one of those consular activities probably will be trade activities and all that, okay, and cultural activities of the your Nigerian community in that country, in South Africa, in this case. Now, Nigeria is going through a stress, financial stress, that they are struggling. Oil revenue, in fact, they just export oil and use the proceeds of the money from oil to service debt. So Nigeria is kneeling out its revenue. So there is hardly any money. So the little they have is for recurrent expenditure, like payment of salaries and what have you. So little is left to fund activities outside Nigeria. Yes, it is a very parlous state. It's a very regrettable state, but that is the reality on ground. Now, that is the level of the government. So the fund and the budget, as little that might come, maybe to pay salaries and what have you. The consular also are supposed to charge some minimum things on activities like passport issuance and TC and all that. But how much can that go? So, and then you do not have very professional people also running some of these environment and all that. So, and if you don't have the vision, if you don't have the understanding, so they will misappropriate even the little fund that is available. After they take it for themselves, it's not available for that. So you're on your own, bottom line. So now at the level of the citizens, because you live in South Africa, because the government does not live in South Africa, the Minister of External Affairs does not live in South Africa, the President does not live in South Africa, most Nigerians live in South Africa. So because you live in South Africa, so you are the one interfacing with the problems, with the reality, with the hostility, with the xenophobic perception that you have. You are the one. So at this point, you will first and foremost have to know that the government will not come to your rescue. But what can we do? Because I am the one living here and doing business here. So what can we do on our own? So now the issue of NICASA becomes very relevant. So NICASA will now have to coordinate the Nigerians available in all spheres, all work, and say, look, gentlemen, there is this crisis. We need to be able to do this. These are our programs. So if the larger Nigerian population, they see the programs of NICASA, and then they trust the leadership of NICASA, they know that there's transparency, there won't be any kind of embezzlement and corruption and what have you, they can subscribe. They can even pay their dues, their levies and all that. Now, as long as there is a program, because if there's no program, what are you paying for? So you can't just come and say, oh, Nigerian support, but what is the program? What are you going to use the money for? So NICASA will have to, of necessity, NICASA will have to articulate programs, activities that has to do with social cohesion, citizenship diplomacy, all kinds of activities and strategy. They have to first and foremost articulate it, because I am yet to see any program from NICASA. Until that program is seen, then we can begin to interrogate those programs and see how that program can be sponsored for the benefit of Nigerians that are here. So Nigerians will have to do things to benefit themselves while they are here.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Akpan. And we will take one last question from one of our, let me see his hand. Yeah, okay, Mr. Adebo Wale. But before I call Mr. Adebo to submit his question, Dr. Akpan, yes, there are actually some programs that NICASA is into. And some of them are not put in the media space, like you clearly said earlier. The content that we don't create, that is why people don't know what we have been doing. But I'm glad that you are part of the team, and we promise to improve where we need to improve. So we will still do more together. You being here is one of the improvement we're making towards changing the narrative. So thank you so much.
Okay, great.
Please,
before Mr. Adebowale asks his question, let me tell you a very popular a very little anecdote with the American Marketing Association. They say that when you, from a marketing perspective,
in 1 minute, sir. In
yes,
1 minute.
Yes, marketing communication is that when you are in a room and you are winking at a pretty lady and the room is dark, the lady does not even know that you're winking. So what does that mean? Light must come in. You need to bring it to the public for people to know what you are doing.
Thank you so much. True. That's a beautiful proverb. Yes. Mr. Adebowale, please go on with your question.
Good evening. I don't have any question. I just want to make comments and
sir.
also clap for Dr. Akpan. My name is Debo Additional, popularly called Prince Ali Amin, founder Nigeria Lives Matter. This is my first time to join this session since the Honorable Secretary and Honorable Omotola initiated this. When I heard the word rebranding, he gave me no. In fact, I'm studying. I just have to jump into the Zoom. Why to support? In fact, you've made my night. You've really given the face. What you mentioned is exactly what we faced. But there's one thing I would just put. You see, the Nigerians in South Africa, we've been doing things here. Like you said, the media, they only call me to come and say when there's bad news. Okay? We've been talking in this country in the media for many years. Bad news only. Okay? So Nigeria now needs to now put hands together. Our leadership here, in terms of the missions, they're putting in register for many, many years for Nigeria to come front, to come and identify, to register. Nobody show up. So that is one of our biggest problems. I think we should need to go back and to encourage Nigerians to go and identify in the consulate, to say, I live here in South Africa, this is my phone number, this is where I live. The day you change, there's a roster there. It was on the website. No Nigerians went there, including myself. Let me just put it like that. So I think we should now try, even including your Dr. Akpan. You understand? All the CGs that have been here, they know us one-on-one as individuals. You understand? I think that's where we should start from. Encourage Nigerians to go and identify in the consulate. That's my submission. Thank you so much.
Okay,
you made my night.
Not a problem. No problem. Let me quickly put an advice there. South Africa is Nigeria is 928 square kilometer, 927 square mile. South Africa is about 1.28 thereabout square miles. So South Africa is a massive country, far bigger than Nigeria. Okay, and so Nigerians are scattered in these countries. So the Nigerian High Commission in South Africa does not have the capacity to have their people in all these places. Now, typical Nigerians, they don't do things until it is late. Now, take note that many Nigerians are undocumented, so they will not even, they will think that if they go and register, you catch them and send them back to Nigeria, so they will avoid it. Anything that will bring them to any kind of formal environment, they will avoid it. They won't go there because of fear of saying, oh, you don't have papers, go back home. So they will run. They will even think it's a trap, it's a setup. So NICASA will now need to partner. That initiative, NICASA will now need to speak with the embassy to say, look, NICASA, in my mind, should be in every city in South Africa. So this NICASA can become the platform and the resource that the Nigerian High Commission can use in registering, in first and foremost, having a buy-in of Nigerians into the project, and also selling this project to them, and also helping them in doing the registration, membership drive, if you like. And it is one thing that we call change management. So we have to have the concept of change management in making them change attitude and also register so that we can run with that vision.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Akpan. I will just speak briefly, then I will give the vote of thanks. Yes, there are a lot of things that we have to improve on. And no one is a monopoly of knowledge, so we're willing to learn. And like I said earlier, it's a brilliant thing that you're working with us and all other Nigerians who have all of these resources to come together. It's our community. This platform was given birth to just within 10 minutes on how we should be meeting regularly and speaking solutions like this. So it's truly an honor to have everyone here. I give you my word that NICASA will improve from where we are currently. We have also kickstarted a digital platform for Nigerians to register. But as you know, it takes time. So we're going to publicize those links for people to register. We have provincial chairmen. We have NICASA's branches in all the 9 provinces in the country. And we have provincial leaders from all of those regions. But some of them don't know in their own provinces. So we're going to improve more footprints to let our citizens know where we are. I want to close by saying thank you to everyone who made time to attend this meeting. It is truly, truly an honor to have all of you here. And to our first-time participants, I truly appreciate you and thank you for your time. We're always having these meetings every Thursday at 7 o'clock, and we share the Zoom link. We're still leaving it on Zoom link to get more participation. As time goes on, we are going to transfer it into a more larger platform that can accommodate more of us, and also put it out on our YouTube channel. I thank you all. I see Mr. Israel there. I thank you so much. Godfred, I thank you so much. Nelly, I see you. Madam, you joined us late. Thank you, Madam. And Mr. Adekunle, I see you. Alex, and every other person that is there. I can't mention the names. We are so much today. Thank you all so much for your time. Next week, Thursday, we are going to be having another great speaker. And I'm going to share the link. And I hope to see all of you there on Thursday at 7 p.m. Honorable Tunji, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I just want thank you very much, Honorable LT. I just wanted to say that NICASA does have a Twitter handle, and I believe the consulate also has a Twitter handle. NICASA has a Facebook page, and so does the consulate. So those 4 platforms are critical for at least some basic information. I thank you very much for attending. See you next week. Thank you, Dr. Akpan. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for those who ask questions. In the future, you can also send questions in advance to the SG once you get a sense of the topic. Have a good evening.